Alien Romulus. It's the 7th film in the Alien franchise, not directed by Ridley Scott, but instead by Fede Álvarez, who has done notable films Don't Breathe and The Evil Dead. Ridley Scott did join the production, but this time as a producer. It has performed well, making over $120 million in the box offices globally, receiving a 7.4 out of 10 on IMDb, 80% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes, and 86% audience score. Hello everybody, welcome back to the Mate Night Podcast, where we are ranking every film ever made.
Hi Dave.
Today we are diving into this latest film in the Alien franchise, giving you a non-spoiler review for the first 15 minutes. Then we'll delve into spoilers with a totally objective critical score section. We'll finally wrap up today's episode with a short segment each built around this film. We've got a jam-packed episode today, so strap in, strap on, and let's kick things off with our initial reactions. This is the most subjective score possible, trying to bottle simply how much we enjoyed this movie. On the count of 3, Fred, I'm going to give you my score, and then you're going to follow immediately after me. Does that sound right?
Shall I 3, 2, 1 you then?
Yeah, go on then.
Go on then. All right, you ready? Alien Romulus. I don't have any tagline. 3, 2, 1.
7.7.
8.4.
Oh, wow.
I liked it a lot, man.
Talk to me. 8.4.
Right.
What does that mean?
So, little bit of foreplay for our audience here. 6.5 for me is my differentiator between net good, net bad. Gut reaction here. How much did we enjoy a film? 8 is great. Definitively, 8 is great. And this was a great experience for me. I had a really, really good time. Several reasons. Atmospherically, I felt like all of the tension that they were trying to achieve, I was bought into. So this film is more geared or kind of more systematic of the first film rather than some of the other ones which go along the more action heavy formula, whereas this really plays on like the horror of the alien as an entity and also the actual genre that you find yourself in. So I really liked it. I thought the tenseness was well realized in a lot of cases. The horror elements were pretty well achieved as well. Although I didn't find it scary, I was brought into some of the jumps, and there are some jumps in this. And my Mrs. Rachel, who watched it, did find it very scary. So I think, maybe if you're going in for a bit of a scary time, you might find yourself effectively scared. I thought the cinematic throwback of it, I liked. I liked that particularly some of the shots, like the whole opening sequence, it really feels like 2001: A Space Odyssey, like the first Alien, like the silence of space, the way they've shot it, they've made it look like it's an older film than it was. And immediately when I'm sat in the movie theater watching this, I felt, this is great. I love this. I love watching this. So the throwback, the nostalgia, just generally, obviously nostalgia can be hard to do right. And this does take a lot of cues from other films before it. But because it was just my enjoyment of the film that I'm ranking this on, I didn't really care. Like, objectively and critically, it's not breaking any new ground. However, I just liked it. I had a great time. I had a really great time, actually. Everything that they were trying to make their audience do, I felt. Everything they were trying to make the audience feel, I felt. I really thought the plot was well done and well crafted. Some of the minor elements were a bit tedious or felt like they were treading some of the ground of other films. But still, without going into spoilers, I was bought in. I came out, was not only pleasantly surprised, but thought that really was a great experience.
It was a good film. It was enjoyable, wasn't it?
What about you?
Yeah, I mean, 7.7 is good. Like, I was kind of getting close to the greats. If anything, maybe I could have gone a little bit higher. I've got a little bit of context just so that anyone who's listening might just so they know exactly what's going on. So there's 7 Alien films. Alien 1979 was the first one. That would be the third in chronological order. So there were 2 before that one. And Alien Romulus follows immediately. So that's the 4th out of the 7. Humanity's struggling to live elsewhere in the universe than Earth. They're on this kind of, our protagonists are on this kind of mining a planet that's kind of very dystopic.
Sure.
There's a lot of mining related deaths and environment related deaths. It's a horrible place, right? And our protagonists, they really want to get out of there. Now, the people who are of concern are Rain, who is the kind of the main character. She's obviously kind of the mirror for the original.
Yep.
played by Cailee Spaeny. She's an orphan girl in her 20s, I guess. And she's accompanied by one of these synthetics, who just like a robot, like Science from the original one. That robot's called Ash. He's the other character we need to worry about, played by David Jonsson. He's a robot. He's a bit pathetic at the beginning. Makes a lot of weird jokes. He's kind of, there's a lot, they do a bit of subtext where they sort of say she's orphaned, and the way we can tell is because Ash has been programmed by Rain's late father to kind of look after her. And one of the ways that they show and don't tell that is by making him tell these very bad dad jokes. And then they just tell us anyway, in case we missed it.
Yeah.
But the two of them, they care for each other very deeply. And then basically, aside from those two, there's just everybody else, which is their kind of ragtag crew of people who, I'll be brutally honest, didn't really matter individually that much to the film.
You got the angry one. You got the technically proficient one. You got the heartthrob. You know, it's a crew.
It's a crew.
This film...
It's not
a crew assembles.
But it's
a heist movie.
But it's not I feel like one of the things that held it back a little bit for me was I was comparing it a lot, and you'll see this throughout this episode, comparing it a lot to Alien 1979. And it's not the crew from Alien 1979. It's just not. It's not even close. Anyway, they're looking for a way out of this planet. They spot an abandoned ship just in reach in nearby space, and they're confident it'll have the materials that they need to get back to what presumably is an Earth and a paradise, somewhere that's not this dystopia. They get to the ship, they realize it's not a ship, it's more of an outpost. Something is amiss about it. It does have their resources, but we are now fighting aliens. And that is the film. That is where we are at. So I really, really liked it. I want to start with the bad things because it usually helps to finish on the thing that I feel more passionately about. So here are kind of the things which I felt held it back from being better for me. It wasn't as scary as the original Alien. I think that part of that is because I think that one is scarier than many. Okay, I don't want to give too much away, but there was something about that original one where it was this singular, terrifying entity that's kind of skulking around and it lost that for me in this one, which is fine. It was still scary, but it wasn't nearly as scary for me, I don't think. But that was fine. There were a few plot devices which were purposefully there to up the stakes, and they weren't totally convincing for me. Again, I don't want to go and ruin anything, but it's the sort of things where there's disaster coming our way. We're on a collision course, these sorts of things, and they just felt a bit convenient, in terms of the writing. But it's fine. The chemistry between Rain, who's the main character, and the side character who is kind of a very half-assed love interest, I was a bit like, either do it or don't it. Don't kind of sit in between.
Got you.
And just kind of broadly, the characters were just not that well set up for me.
Sure.
I think that stems a bit from the dialogue. There's this British guy who, it's just so obvious that they're setting him up to be the guy that you don't like for obvious reasons when you're watching it. And it just felt a bit spoon-fed to me. The character setting up, the dialogue, particularly early on. In terms of the victims, it was kind of predictable for me who was going to die first. And I also knew from the trailer who was going to die as well. So there's two people in the crew of 5 that I already know, like, are definitely
I didn't watch the trailer.
Okay. Well, I'm starting to feel like maybe I should stop.
I avoid them. I avoid them because they give away so much these days.
I know. I should have done as well. But whatever the case, I knew from the poor dialogue who was going to die first. And I knew from the trailer who was going to die early on.
Yeah.
I don't think that they have a great grasp of the size of space, but it's not that important.
What makes you say that? Sorry. Is this going to be hard to do without spoiling it?
Yeah,
okay,
it's to do with how quickly they get from A to B in terms of objectives and potential disasters and things. Like everything is just very, very close together.
Sure.
And part of the thing that I think made Alien so amazing for me was that he spends the first 45 minutes doing nothing but setting up just how much of a void we are in, how alone we are. And in this, everything is one cut away. You know what I mean? Nothing is, everything's just round the corner. And I felt like something was special about that in Alien that it didn't have in this. There was a bit of a small amount of luck, which kept the plot on the rails. That's fine. There was a little bit of, this is going to be a tricky one without spoiling anything, so I'm going to be very, very delicate, but there was a bit of inconsistency in the strength of one of the characters, which I'll go into more in spoilers later, but it just fell a little off. Last two, the perfect organism, the xenomorph, not very good at hearing, I noticed. You can make quite a racket on these things, and they don't seem to hear it. Whatever, fine. And obviously, the very obvious one, generally visually very good, but they brought somebody, they did a face with CGI and it was not good. It wasn't good at all. In fact, it was incredibly distracting. Really, for me, a lot of those are very trivial. The main thing for me was the dialogue and the character setup was, especially the non-main characters, was kind of lacking. Those are really like, that's just everything that I could come up with. Okay. I've got a much shorter sort of list of good things, but these really did matter. The conclusion, I loved it. I loved the way it ended. It really kept me on my toes. I wasn't expecting it to do what it did. I was scared. I was excited. I was happy. It was a really good ending, and that's so important to me. Aside from the CGI mock-up, it was a very visually beautiful movie. The set design was obviously cool, and that's important when you're watching a sci-fi. Broadly, it was just either stunning exploration of space or disgusting guts and gore, and I loved that. The practical effects looked fantastic. The disgusting, goopy stuff is just exactly what you want from an Alien movie. The character development, specifically of Andy, was just so cool. Like, I loved that whole journey.
His whole arc was great.
The jump scares, you mentioned them. Oh, they
really
were brilliant.
Really
I felt
well
like
done.
such a wimp when I like leapt out of my seat a couple of times. That was so cool. And the references to the original you mentioned, I really liked it. I feel like they could have really done a terrible job of that, and I really quite enjoyed it. I didn't mind it at all. I thought it was fine. So it was just a very, very fun, it was well crafted, it was very fun, kind of scary, exciting story with a few little issues, but really predominantly it was in the side characters and the dialogue where that was kind of the thing that stopped it from being comfortably above an 8. It was really missing that. It was stood next to Alien. It was stood like next to Ridley Scott's Alien from 1979, and it just didn't look as good there. So
yeah, I'd need to rewatch it. I am look, to be honest, almost all of your critiques I agree with. I mean, the ones that I don't, they're not like major. Like, for instance, the scale of space. There were points where I actually remember thinking, wow, they've done an amazing job of really demonstrating the scale.
Okay.
So one of the opening shots, kind of like a big zoom out shot, which was, I was like, wow, they really did impress upon me, the size of it. And I thought it was really well done. In terms of like characters and dialogues, I didn't have as much of a gripe with that, really. And I wouldn't say, having not watched Alien as recently as you have, I didn't feel more... I didn't feel like I had a greater connection with the crew on that in Alien compared to this one. Like, I'm not saying that this crew was incredible and I really identified and connected with them all, but I really, outside of understanding that the crew within the first Alien are iconic, I didn't feel like, these are great characters outside of Ripley, say. So, other than that, though, yes, you are right. Almost on all points. Yeah. That's a very fair critiques. And I want to stress, from the gut reaction standpoint, it becomes clear to me how, there's just a buff of enjoying things. You know, you're at the cinema, and this was one which for sure I could see there are points of this film that make it not phenomenal. It's not a phenomenal film. It's probably not an 8.4 in terms of an objective ranking of a film, but I just really enjoyed myself. I really had a great time. I felt how they wanted me to feel in most senses, and importantly, was pleasantly surprised. You know, when you go into something, and you almost give it a buff just based on being surprised at how much you enjoyed it. I've definitely fallen victim to that in this case.
It was a a very enjoyable movie to watch, a really enjoyable movie to watch. And a lot of the problems which I raised are very trivial. Like, they really don't matter a hell of a lot when you are jumping out of your seat, or you are, you are genuinely scared of the outcomes. Like I say, I mean, probably the one other one that I didn't sort of bring up again in the conclusion, which maybe for me, I like as watertight a plot as possible. Generally, I just noticed this seems to be an impossible request. But there were a couple of plot devices which, now we could go into spoilers, I might bring up.
I think we've had a good bash at going non-spoiler, so maybe
yeah, okay, excellent. So specifically, there was a scene where they have finally... God, guns are effective against these guys. I always thought these xenomorphs were so much scarier until I saw guns just like a single gun tear like 20 of them to pieces.
Yeah. Effective that.
I loved the whole like, okay, right. This gravity thing. It wasn't like a malfunction. No. It was like, no, the ship is intentionally switching its gravity on and off.
Yeah.
What is that about?
Fair enough. Yeah, the gravity device... I kind of forgot how much it was there just to be useful.
It was so useful and so pointless.
Yeah, for sure.
That's kind of one of the devices.
Having said that, it did. Yes, okay, it was pointless. Not pointless. It was a bit dumb.
Very dumb.
Very dumb. It did set up. Did set up maybe the best set piece. Maybe top 2 or 3 set pieces within the whole film, which was the acid in zero gravity.
Do you want to explain it in case you haven't seen it?
Yeah, so Jamie's referring to this anti-gravity function that the ship has where occasionally the gravity will just turn off. And so they are effectively all floating in space.
Once every few hours.
And then it will...
Or something?
Yeah, for an arbitrary amount of time, however long the plot needs.
However long it needs it to be off for.
And so then the ship will correct itself and turn the gravity back on as it would do.
Right, this abandoned thing in space.
So the characters become familiar with this. It happens a few times. And then when we're all in climactic action, we've got many xenomorphs involved against our protagonists. We have a set piece where they're effectively cornered, running low on bullets, and the main character, Rain, decides that instead, because she's worried about the acid blood when she fires these shots, just going and absolutely wrecking, causing havoc in the ship, which is a big issue throughout the whole film. They're worried about acid blood burning through the whole... This acid blood seems a lot more potent than it was in the first film, because they did have an instance where it didn't go all the way through in the first film, but in this time...
But it was only a tiny bit in
whereas, okay, in this case, it's like this is going to completely...
She's just torn 20 of them to shreds.
Anyway, she's face to face with all of these, and as Jamie was saying, the gun's very effective.
It's great. One single gun.
She decides to use the anti-gravity function. Did she turn it on, or did she just?
Yeah, I think she did.
I think she did. She remembered they were cornered. Andy said a joke which was to do with gravity, and she remembered, and she turned it off. But again, it's only on a timer or something. Yeah. Remember that? Anyway, whatever. The whole set piece itself is basically her shooting all these aliens.
She can now, they're attacking her, and now she's able to kill them because the gravity is
gravity's off. The acid is just going to float in space. So she kills them all.
Thank God for that. Thank God. We can, because if we didn't have the gravity off right now, we would be brown bread.
You know what? I think you know why I like it. Here's why I like it.
Okay.
Here's why I like the anti-gravity.
Yeah.
Because sorry, how do you pronounce his name? Is it Fede? The director?
Oh, Fede Álvarez.
Fede.
Oh, God,
so whether it was Fede or Ridley, I know Ridley was a producer on this, or one of the writers, whoever it was, probably thought, okay, we are in a situation where we want them to be cornered.
Yes.
And we want there to be loads of xenomorphs, and we're only down to the last couple. We're only down to Andy and Rain. Now, how do we get out of this? Oh, if only I could think of a way to get out of this. Well, in space, there's no gravity.
Right.
So why don't we create a device that randomly turns the gravity off? Could we do that? No one will notice that, will
we got to give it a catch. All right, just Make it so the ship turns it on and off every now and
the
then.
ship decides to just whack it in there every now and again.
Just so we can mention it early on in the film, so it's not a random help.
So similarly to how when we discussed M. Night Shyamalan putting his daughter in his own film, but he put up all the money for it, so we don't really mind. I quite like this ballsy move of being like, the guy's obviously had an idea and just putting the stupidest device possible to achieve it.
It's fine. It's one of like 2 or 3 where I was like, these are kind of convenient plot things. There was another minor plot hole afterwards, hole being quite fitting because the gravity turns back on. It blows a hole in the hull of the area that they are in. There's no air locking. The gust of wind manages to remove a load of xenomorphs or something for us, which is great, but somehow they don't just suffocate, which I couldn't figure out at the time.
Which one was it? Was this near the end when they're in the shaft?
They have literally, so they've turned off the gravity, they floated through, they've shot them all, they floated through the floating acid, which was cool. They've gone into the lift shaft to get to their escape shuttle. There's no air, it's just a wire fence between them and the lift shaft. They start moving up the lift shaft, and then the gravity turns back on. Oh shit, because she's floating, so she's going to plummet to her death, and then all this acid goes to the floor, which was always their worry. And then it blows a hole in the ship, and it depressurizes, and loads of xenomorphs just get really badly impacted from it. Apart from our protagonist, they're fine, right? Yeah. And also now we can still breathe somehow in space.
Yeah, because the elevator flew down the shaft and blocked the hole.
Yeah. Oh, here's my point about power inconsistency, right? Ash. Okay.
Right.
The guy takes like a gentle knock to the head and he's on the floor for 20 minutes, but he can catch like what must be about a 2,000 kilogram lift with one hand and just hold it up.
So what is the reason behind him? Is it getting hit? Because I thought at first he was autistic. I didn't realize he was synth. I thought, they've done a really good job of not demonstrating, but like showcasing what it's like inside the mind of someone with autism. At first, because he's obviously a bit
neurodivergent.
Yes, and then he's getting picked on when Rain is off to try and get them off the planet.
Yeah.
He's getting picked on, and it shows kind of like a cacophony going on in his head. Very difficult to drown out the noise, and then it turns out actually he's synthetic, and he's been
a cool reveal. I like that.
I like the reveal that he was synthetic. But this then comes up as a device they use a couple of times where he will basically just get triggered by something, or he'll get a slight hit to the head, and then suddenly he'll be cowering in a corner.
He'll be comatose on the floor. Yeah. He won't be able to move.
Do you remember, did this happen to, Rook, who was brought back, Ian Holmes' character, is this an issue with synthetics generally, or is it just his character? I was trying to remember if
the only thing that I might say on that, and okay, let me just caveat this to anybody listening. I have only watched Alien, okay? So I do not know. But in Alien, I don't know if his name is Rook, but Science, when he has the fight with Ripley, is it Ripley? It's Ripley, isn't it? Somebody hits him on the head, and then he starts to go full, sort of like he very obviously is a synthetic at that point. Yeah. He's not behaving like a human who might have been hit on the head. He's just completely malfunctioned, short-circuiting. That's the only other time that we've seen it. So I suppose that's fine. It was more just the fact that like there were a couple of moments where he'd like catch a lift with one hand, and I'd just be like, how can this same guy be? He almost was like way physically stronger when he had, because he got this chip in his head which made him smarter, which was fucking brilliant. Awesome. I loved the whole ashing. I loved it, but I wasn't ever really sure how strong he was, even at the end of the movie, because there were just some moments where he was completely pathetic and some moments where he was incredibly strong, and I just kind of wasn't really clear on it.
Was his name Ash? I thought it was Andy. Was it Andy?
Oh, it might have been Andy.
Let me have a look.
Hang on, no, I've got it here.
Andy.
It is Andy. Apologies, everybody. Andy, I was so swept up in the details. So, have you got anything else to add before we just because we're on to 25 minutes?
Yeah. So CGI and practical effects. Yeah, I generally liked the effects, but as you say, there was that CGI section, or basically when they brought back Rook's character, it was a bit
It was awful. It
Yeah,
was
it was a
very
bit all over the
distracting.
place. I got round it. Initially, I was like, that's shockingly bad. It's almost purposefully bad.
Yes.
And then I was like, in my head, I managed to accept it quite quickly because I was like, oh, he's kind of half alive, he's supposed to
Sure.
look really artificial. So the uncanny valleyness of it didn't actually jar me as much as I've looked at other reviewers who've said that it was shocking,
terrible.
and same with you. So the face hugger lair scene. So these are on the
Oh,
negatives.
the face huggers. We haven't mentioned them yet.
Yeah, so generally I really enjoyed the facehugger scene. One of the great shocks, or one of the great jump scares, was when they'd managed to get past them all initially, and then Navarro's character, the woman who first dies, ends up like out of nowhere just getting attacked. Right, they basically felt like they'd got through all of the face huggers. One had managed to just sneak through the gap. You finally felt that they were safe, and then just bang, out of nowhere. I thought that was a great sequence.
Are all, as well, like face huggers, just Dan O'Bannon, like just the face hugger. Oh my God, it's what you go to Alien for. They are. I prefer them to Xenomorph. They're so much more disturbing to me.
Yeah,
the Xenomorph is just like
such
a bit of
violation.
Yeah, it's so horrible.
Talking of violations, like the whole ending, baby Xenomorph hybrid was.
I loved that.
I liked it as well.
I was like, I could not fucking believe what was going on.
I think they had. So that was something that was almost inspired by Alien 3 as well. I think there's a dream sequence, if I remember. It's been a while since
I thought it could. I did want to.
I don't think they've full on done something like that, but they've had like a dream sequence where Ripley would birth an alien. Someone will correct me if I'm wrong there. I really liked that. It actually reminded me of Smile recently. Had the horror film Smile, had a very similar body horror, like
Smile 2's coming out soon.
gargantuan creature. Oh gosh, Smile 1 shook me up. But the facehugger lair scene where we're like, oh no, they go by body heat and sound. We've done that sort of thing before where they can't see, you see sequences like that. And then, especially as you mentioned, when Tyler, he ends up taking the call from his sister Kay. And you're like, what's going on? We're being dead silent. And then he can just have a full-on conversation and whisper. Yeah, that was a bit stupid. The length of the film, I did feel it probably didn't need that many endings, even though I really liked the last ending. Maybe it felt like they resolved it, and then they just brought another shock.
Well, I've got a cool story for you there. You mentioned Ridley Scott's involvement. I saw a video of him explaining Fede Álvarez had shown him the first draft, showed it to the Ridley Scott, the guy who made Alien, the one and only. And Ridley Scott goes, okay, I'm not actually going to tell you what my feedback is. I'm gonna write it down, and then I'm going to give that to you, and you can take it away. So he writes it down. He gives it to Fede Álvarez. Fede Álvarez goes into another room, and he hears him kick a wardrobe, smash something, come back out and go, thanks for that, they're really good. And then walks off and makes every single one of the changes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and the interviewer said, can you tell me what the kind of feedback was? And he said, I'm not going to give you any details, but he said, usually directors make movies too long, and you don't want to lose the dynamic element of your movie. And so that was effectively what I was doing, was I was trying to tell him where to cut back. And so that's to give everyone an idea of Ridley Scott's involvement in this.
Yeah.
He was very top level. This was very much Fede Álvarez's movie. And Ridley Scott seems to, presumably he'll have been involved in some technical elements. He'll probably been involved early on, but it sounds a lot like until that day, there was a lot that he just hadn't been involved in until that moment. So
that's really interesting. I think that, interestingly enough, I'd be interested to see how long it would have been if he cut it down, because I really liked the whole end sequence. I thought it was really cool, but maybe it felt like we'd come straight off of a climax, off of a high, then into another.
But it does that in Alien 1979.
I know, but I don't think I really enjoyed that much in Alien 1979. I think there's a way to be a bit more consistent with it. So minor gripes. I'll be honest, I really, really thoroughly enjoyed this one. Really enjoyed it. There were issues with it, but I didn't really care.
Well, I tell you what, on the topic of creators making their stuff too long,
Hmm.
We were supposed to stop this at 15 minutes, and we're at 30.
Let's
so we're going to have
blast
to
through.
rattle through our critical score sections. Our enjoyment section was really about those gut reaction scores, was really about just how enjoyable was this movie. But we are now going to rate it in a bunch of categories where we're trying to figure out how good the movie was in these different areas. We're going to start off with plot. We're going to do our absolute best to just absolutely rattle through these. Personally, I thought the plot had a really, really good driving force. Generally, I really like the whole escaping from, these monsters. It was exciting. It was fun. The plot holes were fine. They weren't that bad. Like, I've seen worse very recently. I would be happy with an 8 or 9.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so I don't think I could give it a 9 because, as you say, there was a lot wrong with it.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
8.
Yeah.
So was it great? Now, there were great elements for sure, and like particularly all of Andy's whole arc was amazing.
But we probably put that under character.
Yeah, but I mean, I more meant the story of it. So
Okay.
how they used him to drive things on.
Okay.
So by making him
he was very important.
It's tied to the character. I do get as well. Okay, I think we go with a. Go on, give it an 8.
To give you an idea, the other 8s we've got are The Sound of Music, Jaws, The Thing, Gladiator, Old Boy, and Dune Part 2. The 7s we've got are Alien, 500 Days of Summer, and Challengers.
Maybe 7.
Do you know what? Yeah, I agree. Okay, cool.
7.
Character. I'm going to go out here and just say, like, there was Andy, who was really cool and interesting. Rain was absolutely fine. And I did not give a shit about anybody else.
Fair enough. The Xenomorph.
Yeah, right.
He's good.
He's fine. But
Is
even
that a
then,
character?
there's just so many of them that I kind of don't really...
Yeah. Okay, so what we thinking? Andy's definitely a 8, maybe, let's say 8 character at least. Yep. But other than that, like, Rain's cool, but not an 8.
If 6.5, which we can't give, is bang in the middle, I would say 7. For all the characters in Alien
7,
Romulus.
do it.
Yeah? All right,
7 it.
Dialogue.
Okay.
Go on. What are you thinking?
I didn't like... So they had obviously a lot of tie-ins to the last ones. Now, there was one specific quote, get away from her, you bitch, which is from Aliens.
Yes.
The most famous line in Aliens. And the delivery on it, it's not just the delivery, but maybe I'll go into dialogue here. I don't know. The dialogue wasn't that great, was it?
I didn't think so.
like it. What made it bad for you?
It felt... It tied quite closely into character where I felt like the dialogue was spoon feeding me how I should feel about these characters. That was really what bothered me about it. I don't generally mind a bit of exposition, but what I do mind is the British guy being a complete and utter asshole for the whole thing, so that we know for a fact this is the guy that we shouldn't like.
I immediately thought of him when you said
it's stuff like he was the worst, but generally no, he was really the problem. If you took him out, I guess the dialogue wasn't that bad. It really was him that was pissing me off a lot. But I didn't think that the dialogue was especially good in this movie.
No.
But aside from him, it also wasn't atrocious. I'd probably go with a 6 for me.
6.
Sick. Performance. I'm going to let you lead this one.
So my favourite performance is Rain, who is Cailee Spaeny.
She was good.
I think the best character is Andy by an absolute mile. All the others do well with what they're given. I mean, dialogue-wise, as you say, it's kind of hit your mark here. We need you to drive the plot forward, particularly some of Tyler's and Kay's lines. So the siblings, like you mentioned how it seemed their whole romance, Kay's and Rain's, was kind of out of nowhere. And I felt like the dialogue for the expositional side of us understanding their romance was basically Kay being like, he needs you here, and you know,
Right.
they didn't really explain anything, but they just alluded to some
It was
romance.
very half-assed, that.
So for what they had, I thought they were all passable.
Yeah.
I actually thought that Spike Fern, so the English guy, the angry English guy, did a good job considering how annoying his dialogue is.
I think that the problem was really the character,
Character,
not the performance.
So I thought he did all right, even though the character, as you say, was David Jonsson, so Andy, that is by far the best character on the page. Like, that's everyone's dream would be, I'd love to be able to play that character.
Yes.
And he's fine as well.
I feel like that would have been a reasonably easy role to play.
I thought that this is like, you'd love to play that.
Yeah.
Like, you get to basically be two characters.
He did
good. Yeah, he didn't do badly. But I remember Rachel coming out and saying, wow, he was the best. I personally felt like Cailee Spaeny did a great job. But across the board, it was more just, they did fine. And I would say probably a 7.
I was sure you were going to go with 7. Cool. Okay, and I'm very happy with that. Visuals.
Yeah, I really liked it.
I really liked the visuals.
I really liked it a lot. And I think included into that is the building of tension through, you know, the jump scares and the ability.
Okay.
So the visuals and the sound obviously play a big part in horrific moments.
Yeah.
Special effects, the only bad one, but it was a real stinker.
It was just like there was a blunder.
Yeah, it was almost like just the one black spot. Outside of that, the practical effects for the Xenomorphs were quality.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really felt like the practical effects of the baby Xenomorph were quite harrowing.
Yes.
Did a great job at that. Some of the scenes, the disturbing scenes, like the birth, were just so visceral.
Oh, that was just awful.
And then aside from that, anyway, like the shots, the opening shot, the opening sequence in space, the silence of it, I remember being like this. I was immediately like, I like this.
That's what Alien is for, man.
Yeah. So I am in the 8 or even 9 realm.
Yeah. I'm the same as you. Yeah. I tell you what, since we're stuck between the two, should we have a quick look at what comes into those two?
Yeah, give me some...
Okay, so we have quite a few 9s. We have quite a few 9s and quite a few 8s. So I'm going to go with the 9s. Psycho, Apocalypse Now, The Sound of Music, Jaws, The Thing, Alien, Team America, Empire Strikes Back. Yeah, I think it could fit with them. 8 visually, Godfather, Gladiator, Old Boy, 500 Days of Summer, Crouching Tiger, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, Casino, and Heat. I think it fits better with that 9 category.
The only issue is like it's got that one absolute stinker, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like you made an interesting point, which is like there kind of could be a bit of a benefit of the doubt thing, where the whole character, the whole thing, the character itself, and then the character within the plot, everything around it was supposed to be unsettling. And so you could maybe give a benefit of the doubt for that. I don't know. But yeah, I suppose if you're going to give something a 9 out of 10, they really can't be making any serious blunders.
Yeah, I would say 8.
Okay, cool. Sound.
Good.
I can't remember it personally, but not in a bad way. I'm not great at noticing sound. I usually let you lead this.
No, I think, again, building tension, they did a great job, and jump scares are as much about the sound, if not
I agree with that,
more.
yeah.
There were certain moments where I felt they did so well at making you on the edge of your seat think something was going to happen and not. I'm specifically speaking about when Kay fell off the ship, the pregnant woman, when she fell off the ship after the xenomorph that actually birthed out of Navarro and then killed the angry Brit.
Yes.
And she was on the run, she fell out of the ship. And then she basically got up and was like, I need to get out of this room. And you just were certain. They just played with you, thinking they were going to jump scare, and they didn't really, kind of half delivered one right at the end. I thought it was great. Again, kind of mixing in all of the elements of the experience there. But
you say you thought it was great. You know what that means.
Should we do an 8 is great?
You know what? I think so.
You know what? We gave a good score for 2001 for the silence as well. Like the use of silence was good.
That was very sophisticated of us, that. Was that sounds a lot like something you'd say, not me. We're moving on to impact. It's got 7.4 IMDb, 80% critics score, 86% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, $120 million. It's part of the Alien franchise. It sounds like an 8 or 9 to me. What do you think?
Oh, I wouldn't say that. For me, an impact, right, an 8 or a 9. A 10 is like once every few years.
Okay.
Like this changes.
I like this. Yeah. Okay.
9 and 8, you're talking the most impactful films of the year. I don't think Alien comes into it, and the fact that it's a legacy sequel. It's done all right at the box office, but it's not done. I was more thinking kind of 6 or 7 sort of.
Okay. I'm going to campaign for 7 because I do think that it seems to have done very, very well with audiences, critics. Everybody seems very, very happy with this movie.
Yeah.
And well, I guess this is an interesting question about our impact segment is does it actually get a buff for being part of an important franchise? Because it is part of like the Alien franchise has impact. And so if it's part of that franchise, then presumably that would mean it has a greater impact than, say, something that is not part of an important franchise.
So here is my counter to that true originality has a greater impact. So because it can draw from
which
an established name,
lot.
And it did it like it was in many ways very unoriginal. Personally, a kind of groundbreaking film, let's say, on the extreme end, I can't see that being a sequel. Is it a sequel would just be so rare for that to happen. Whereas, yes, I do get what you mean. Like it's established because it comes from Alien, but also when you're talking about there've been 9 Alien films. Like, does it lose a bit of that weight of an impact?
Okay. So what are you thinking? 6?
We can go 7.
Okay,
because of as you say, it's done well. Like,
yeah, and I tell you what, I scripted this earlier on for my segment coming up, but we have seen how high and how low Alien movies can go. You know what I mean? Like there have been, like, as far as I'm aware, I wish I could say I've watched them all, but my understanding is there are some real stinkers out there.
Yeah.
Okay, so the May Night Podcast has now rated Alien Romulus out of 10 in 9 different categories. We've tried to take into account everything, how good it is, how enjoyable it is, how good it is in very different areas. We've averaged it out. We're holding it against everything else. And here are the results. Alien Romulus 2024 scored an 8.4 out of 10 for Fred's enjoyment, a 7.7 out of 10 for Jambo's enjoyment. Then it got, in the critical score section of how good it was, a 7 for plot, a 7 for character, a 6 for dialogue, a 7 for performance, an 8 for visuals, an 8 for sound, a 7 for impact, giving it 7.34 out of 10, making it the 26th greatest film of all time. But for a bit of reference, it's kind of putting it 25% from the bottom of our very epic list. We are going through some real belter classics.
Whereabouts is Alien?
Okay, yeah, good one. So Alien Romulus is 26th and Alien is 22nd.
Nice. I'm glad it got higher because
7.59.
I gave a higher gut reaction for Romulus, and Alien
deserves to be higher. It does.
But I liked Romulus.
Okay, cool. So for those still listening to the long form, we're going to move into our segments, our specific areas. Do you, I don't mind who goes first. Do you want to go first? Or?
I've got mine up, so I can do mine.
Be super mindful of time. We're going to be very quick today. These are going to be 8-minute videos on YouTube.
Woo!
Because we are not going to talk.
All right, let's absolutely rattle through this then. So, Jambo, my segment today isn't going to be a change. I watched Alien Romulus, made me think this is something I want to delve into. I want to hear what Jambo's thoughts are. I want to hear what Mate Knight's thoughts are. I want to understand what my thoughts are. And so today, Jambo, I want to ask you the question. Is it right to use AI to bring back actors from the dead?
Oh, okay.
So, just for a bit of context here, I've got a little bit of preparation around the historical precedent of the use of AI, some ethical concerns or the breakdown of the ethics, a little bit into the legality of it, but really I've just prepared some questions. I'll have to give a very brief overview and then we can go into it. I'm keen to understand your thoughts. How does that work for you?
I'm very much looking forward to this, mate.
Perfect. So, historical precedent. Go on.
Why are we asking this for Alien Romulus specifically?
Good idea. Let's explain that. We just watched Alien Romulus, in which Ian Holm was resurrected. Now, Ian Holm played the character of, you mentioned his name was Science in it. He's referred to as Rook in this. I think he was called Rook in the original as well, if I remember correctly.
I wasn't sure.
So he is brought back in this. He's a synthetic who is essential for the plot of Alien to drive home that we need to keep this alien alive, blah, blah, blah. You know what? It's not important. Anyway, he's been brought back in Alien Romulus, again, for kind of driving the plot forward so that it syncs enough with the rest of the franchise. And what they've done is leveraged AI as well as practical effects and any other special effects to effectively, nice use of the word effect there, make it seem like he's there, make it seem like he's performing and acting in this film. Now, he's been dead, I want to say, a couple of years now.
Okay.
And this isn't the first time this has happened. One of the worst in terms of the effects that were used that we've seen. It's coming up more and more. In this age of AI, we've got the ability to deep fake and use AI to basically bring people back to life.
Yeah.
How do we feel about it? They've been using it a while for a lot of big franchises now. Is it right? Are they going about it the right way? Do I feel comfortable with it? Do you feel comfortable with it? That's what we're going to discuss.
Sure.
So, historical precedent. So, the use of a deceased person's likeness in film dates back decades. Obviously, then it was very different to how it looks now. The practice has evolved significantly in many of the ways I just mentioned, but to give you an example of some of the early cases, what they used to do was things like stock footage and body doubles. Unsurprisingly, they couldn't do a crazy amount more than that.
Right.
Some examples that I've looked at here would be Plan 9 from Outer Space. So Bela Lugosi, who was one of the first Draculas, he was used in this. We might actually have been one of the first Frankensteins. I should check that. Let me just check that.
Yeah, we'll cut.
Dracula, yes, brilliant. So he was used in that, and the death led director Edward to use stand-ins and recycled footage. Now, in 1990s, although we had CGI in place, you got a bit of a mix of effective effects and kind of computerized versions of people. Forrest Gump uses it to that effect,
yes,
where it takes real footage and sort of superimposed Forrest in, and then overdubs it. So, for instance, there's a scene where Tom Hanks is with JFK. He's getting presented with a Medal of Freedom or something like that. Right. And JFK, the sequence shows JFK from some videotapes of the White House have been presenting the medal. Forrest Gump's literally superimposed in, and then they overdub someone with a JFK impression. And because their mouth is moving similar,
it looked fine.
Yeah, it's more. It just looks of the time. You don't really go against it. But then we get to the 2000s, and then there's the increasing use of CGI for deceased actors, most notably in Gladiator, which we looked at last week, where Ollie Reed was in the actual film up to a point, died, and then they put him in a couple of scenes, basically with his face superimposed again on, and that seemed to be the way that they were going about it. Kind of limited screen time, just put him in.
Smart, really.
Smart way of doing it.
But if you want to check out our Gladiator episode, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you're enjoying this video, Gladiator. We've just done it. It's on our YouTube
Yeah,
channel.
literally last episode. Oh, it probably was released a couple of episodes before. But
we talk a bit about Ollie Reed in that and what we thought about his performance and his character.
Now, the real problem comes in the 2010s and 2020s. So 2010s, you start to get photorealistic resurrection, effectively. For instance, you got Furious 7 with Paul Walker when he died. And then that's followed by Rogue One, where, and this is quite a famous example of it being a bit... Where are we going with the ethics of this? So Peter Cushing was the person who played Grand Moff Tarkin in the original Star Wars. He died in 1994, and they brought back him in the likeness that he had in the original Star Wars for that film. Also, we had Carrie Fisher who died, and she was brought back in Rise of Skywalker. Disney are really up there in terms of driving this use of bringing people back from the dead, because they, I believe, retain the likeness of a lot of their characters. At this point, we also get legal frameworks that come into place. So the actors' estates are often asked and are involved in the decisions,
right?
Presumably with quite a lot of money on the line as to if you can let us use these, here's your payout. The laws governing posthumous rights to one's likeness vary by country and state. In the US, states like California and New York have specific laws regarding posthumous rights of publicity, typically extending up to 70 years after death. So it's similarly a bit like the copyright laws here, where maybe you don't get your likeness, it goes into the public domain 70 years after death.
That's weird. Which
is weird, but also kind of makes sense, because how would you do things like films about Napoleon or films about famous historical figures? So are they already in the public domain? And then you got 2020, so AI, deepfake, the example most recently of Alien Romulus and Ian Holm. Really, this has been happening for a long time, but now it seems like we mentioned the uncanny valley in this instance, but because of how realistic things are getting, it seems to be becoming more uncomfortable for people when you can actually like completely mimic a person's voice and likeness. Mm-hmm. Is that in good? Is that in good ethical consideration?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I reckon it's definitely important to divide that question into ethical and artistic, because it didn't look good in Romulus. But I think that the artistic one is maybe less interesting, because that'll just be as technology gets better.
It's a great point you make. Like, we will forgive ethical concerns when the art is good. Like,
for sure, yeah.
Generally speaking, if something is done well, people are much more forgiving of their moral compass.
And then obviously there's going to be a question of what it is that you're making them do, because it seems like, oh yeah, well, come on, like it's not that bad. But then it's like, well, we just did, and I won't go into any detail, but we just did Deadpool, which is a very slapstick, violent film. If you brought Ian Holm back and put him in some of those action sequences, that would be just a very undignified thing to do to somebody. And so it's like, okay, well, what are you actually... Is the question, can you do anything? Or at what point do we draw that line where it's like, this is not okay to be making them look like they're doing this thing? Or
does it effectively make sense to have people give consent for their likeness? I mean, this may be something that they do anyway, but given they have to ask the estate, are people giving consent for their likeness posthumously now as part of their contracts? Is that something that has to happen? Like, if I die, can you use me for AI resurrection?
Yeah.
And the other element, I think, the real big ethical concern is the financial motivation. So is the use of a deceased person's likeness primarily to be driven by financial gain unethical? That comes into the question of art versus money as well.
Yeah.
Like... Can you be broad? Can you cast a broad brush with this? Can you say that it's always wrong or it's always right, or is it case by case?
That's a good point. Yeah. Can you? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess the question that I've been sort of trying to figure out is, why not? Like, that's kind of where my head's at. Okay, why would we not do this? Because I think that would probably shed some light on it. And I guess because even your own estate can't really truly give consent to whether you are okay with that, with the message that they are giving or whatever. And so there's something very spiritually wrong about doing that. Do you know what I mean? Even with the estate's permission.
Yeah, I mean, actors will do things that are maybe against their specific moral code for the case of money or for the case of, just getting a leg up in the industry. But they always have the choice, or you feel like there is the autonomy there. Whereas taking that barrier at death, crossing it, should we be less okay than we are with it?
Yeah. So there's the question of why not? And then there's also a bit of a question as well of like, do we even really need to be doing this? Like, okay, it was cool to bring back Ian home, fine. But like, do we have to?
Is it lazy?
Okay, I'll make an extreme case. There might be a situation in which it absolutely doesn't make sense to have anybody else playing that character. It feels okay to me to do an AI deepfake of them playing that same character in a specific situation. I can see a very specific situation arising that I would feel okay with, and I can also see a very specific situation which I would not be okay with. And I think that what that means is there just kind of cannot be any broad strokes to it. And there's just going to have to be the sort of traditional legal thing where we just kind of start building up a case-by-case basis of what's okay and what's not, I guess.
Yeah, it's definitely something that needs to be more fleshed out than it is at the moment. Let me ask you this. If you died tomorrow, and I decided to ask your family if I could use your likeness for one more episode.
Yeah.
Where we'll discuss Jamie's favourite film. And we had the AI technology in place to perfectly replicate your voice
for sure
and your image. And we decided to release a video performance of us speaking. You obviously, this is just an imprint and interpretation of your real opinions based on other catalogue of
evidence.
It's a
statistical analysis of my previous opinions.
And then it was able to, how would you feel about that?
Honestly, if I was watching down from above, personally, no issue whatsoever at all. In fact, I would even maybe go a step further and say I would be quite far on the extreme of like, once I'm dead, and I don't care.
What if he made better points?
Well, if it's going to be a statistical analysis of me, Fred, it's not going to be done.
What if you looked and got jealous of how good he was?
The guy never learns. He's just stuck like that forever. Yeah, that's my one caveat. If you're going to do an AI deepfake of me, just make sure it slowly knows a little more about movies each week. I personally wouldn't care. Would you?
Yeah, I think so.
You would, even if you knew it was going to be nice. Let's say, if I asked you before you died.
I think if I saw something, let's say specifically for opinions, if I saw something giving an opinion, pretending to be me, I would really struggle with that. Now, that's obviously different to this, where it's not like the character is their own. Like, at least in part, the character is the organizations or the writers or the producers. Like, yes, they are identifiable with that character, and they clearly are a part of them. But in the case that I just gave there, like, that really is you. It's a representation of you. So I think that I'd have a much bigger issue with that personally. But would I have as much of an issue of someone bringing a character that I played, say? Maybe not.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think if to make things interesting, I will try to give an answer of what I think, and I think that it's fine. Personally, I think that we probably want to come up with some kind of specific regulations to be like, you can't do this and you can't do that. But broadly, you can, we can come up with some rules to kind of keep us in a correct playing field. But spiritually, ethically, I don't think that there's anything wrong with taking a dead actor and having them perform more roles. I don't see why it would matter. They're dead. Who gives a shit?
They are dead and they have no rights anymore. But what did you think? Do you think that we are going about this the right way? Does there need to be more changes made with the advancement of AI, with deepfakes, legislatively? What are we doing about this? Do more conversations need to be had? Are we right? Are we wrong? Are we way off? Is there anything you'd add to this conversation? Let us know below.
I'm going to try and put a poll below. I don't know if I can, but if I can, there will be a poll in the comments. So check that out.
And it will be, did Ian Holm look weird?
And there's only going to be one.
Yes or
there's
yes.
only going to be one option. And it's just going to be, yes, he looks creepy. Okay. Thanks so much for listening, guys.
Thanks for listening.
See
Bit
you
of a
on the
different
next
one. If you liked it, give it a like, give it a subscribe. Thank you.
Excellent. What are we doing? 1 hour bang on at the minute. So I wouldn't mind I'm quite happy with my idea for my segment, but it's not going to take me very long to run through. It might not even be an 8-minute. So,
Run through it and let's see.
Basically, I'm just going to make a case. If you've got anything to add, anything to take the piss out of, anything at all, just see what you think. Okay, so we've seen the highs and lows of what the Alien franchise can produce. Alien Romulus was a damned good effort. For me, plot makes or breaks a movie. And at Mate Night, we have to come up with a change for every review. I think I can make this slightly better. Bear in mind, there will be spoilers ahead. If you like my thoughts on this, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you don't like it, don't forget to comment. For context, we are stuck on a dystopic mining planet. Rain, our main character, 23-year-old orphan girl, Andy, her robot companion, and team of rugged people. Those are the people who are relevant. Mm-hmm. We are desperate to escape. Right. People die here all the time. Environment, mining, it's dystopic. It's horrible. It's dirty. It's dark, as all dystopic races. Once it gets dystopic, it's dark. We find that there's an abandoned spaceship in nearby space. It's probably carrying materials which can be used to get us the hell out of here. So we fly up, we try to take the materials, and we find it's actually a ravaged space station and a bunch of xenomorphs are waiting for us. To make things worse, we are on a collision course for the planet rings.
Yes.
Okay, so here are the things that I didn't like about this movie and what I'm going to try and fix.
Hit me.
Number one, most importantly, the character development. Aside from Andy, every single time I say Andy, it's written as Ash.
When did you get this, by the way? When did you just... when was the change that it's Ash versus
It looks
Andy?
quite early on. I don't think I ever called him Andy.
Perfect. Brilliant.
Aside from Andy and Rain, our main characters, I didn't care about the other characters at all. I found them kind of annoying. The dialogue kind of spoon-fed me how I was supposed to feel about them. I could very much take them or leave them. So the characters, I feel like there was room for improvement. Number two, certain plot devices, and specifically in this case, the planet's rings. Okay, it just kind of it's used to increase the stakes. It does this a couple of times.
Dem rings.
But when we're escaping from xenomorphs, I actually just didn't care about the rings at all. It kept trying to remind me about them, and I was like, I don't care.
Shoehorned it in right there.
Yeah, we're gonna figure. They're gonna figure this out. I don't care. We've got xenomorphs on our tail. Just stop reminding me about it. They're gonna solve it. Let's just survive these death aliens. Also, we're in a perfect position and trajectory to just happen to make the movie perfectly tense, which just kind of felt wrong and lucky from a writing perspective for me. And then finally, this is one I haven't mentioned so far. I thought there could have been a bit more difficulty getting up to the spaceship. So I watched Alien 1979, the original one, the other day. And one of the things that I really appreciated about it this time round was the effort he went to make sure that you understood how serious this environment we are in, okay? How much of a void it is, how likely you are to die. In this case, one of the things he does is when they're first landing on the planet in the original Alien, there's turbulence, there's damage to the ship. It's not an easy process. Right. I really, really liked that. It did a lot to set up how serious of a situation that we are in. And it felt like It didn't do as good a job of that in this one. And specifically, one of the areas I thought that it could have done that in was when they were getting up to the spaceship. With it, one scene, we find out about the spaceship, and then I think it's like 2 scenes later and we're in it. And it was just like, we just jumped into this rocket ship outside our caravan because apparently we can afford a spaceship but not a caravan, a slightly bigger caravan. Whatever, fine. I just thought it could have been more difficult. So my proposal is this. Remove the whole asteroid belt thing. Okay, just get rid of that completely.
Out of it.
And with the time that you save, make it challenging getting to the spaceship. This would give us a chance to kind of put us on edge. It would flesh out the dystopic world and the company below in the mining company and all that. And it would give that a chance to kind of feel more dangerous, like there's somebody on our tail down there. It gives us a chance to feel something about the characters where we're not just spoon-fed it in some basic dialogue, but where they have to make decisions and do actions whilst they're escaping from the planet to get to the space station. You know, there's adversity, they have to make decisions, and we start to see these characters for who they are. Whereas in this, on the flight up, one of them's a dick, one of them tells us they're pregnant, one of us does. Do you know what I mean? And it just kind of felt very, very spoon-fed. And I didn't really feel like it needed... Like I say, the rings, because the xenomorphs were plenty of stakes. They were plenty of a problem for me.
Yeah.
I didn't need any more than that. So I think that would make a better movie. Obviously, the main problem I haven't solved is that it presents as the ending. So for spoilers, I've already spoiled some stuff, but I'm about to spoil the end.
More spoilers.
So since we don't have a supernova-sized bomb like in the original, which I watched the other day, like I say, I could not believe how big that bomb was. It was absolutely hilarious. And now we can't crash into those rocks at the perfect moment, which, like, thank God we could in this. How do we kill the xenomorphs?
The Xeno baby.
The Xeno babies. And here's what I came up with.
Go on.
Just get a second gun.
Those guns were very effective.
just one more gun and we're good. It's so annoying. We just happen to run out of bullets. A couple
pistol by anything.
One more interesting idea. The girl who...
that was your idea.
That was my solution. But I thought maybe I'll back it up with a different one.
Or maybe. All right. How about this? I don't know if you've thought of this, but given Andy's ability to stop a lift flying at gravity, whatever, terminal velocity, with one arm.
Yes.
And these aliens get ravaged by bullets.
Yes.
I imagine the strength required to stop a lift that can carry a ton.
Yeah.
At full. It was going, wasn't it? It was like,
fast.
And
well, it killed a bunch of xenomorphs. Like,
killed. Yeah.
10 of them.
And he one-armed it. Could he not just, I don't know, punch a hole through their head?
Yeah. Well, that's a good one. So we got guns and Andy. I've got a more creative one for us.
Yeah, all right.
Which seems a bit more fun than this.
It seems a bit more fun, Fred. You bellend.
Why don't they just punch them? The girl who took the xenomorph injection, maybe instead of her, I know then we lose but maybe part of what happens is she kind of takes on some of the Xeno powers. And then we've kind of got this violent anti-hero on a rampage before she dies, and that can be how we solve the final problems without just like, thank God we crashed into those rocks at this exact moment. We've actually now got like
so Kay takes the thing,
yes,
and she turns into
she just kind of I was thinking like Venom sort of style thing going on.
But what do we need her? Who do we need to stop?
Maybe she still gives birth to the
Xeno.
I'm just thinking that injection. It's been, as far as I'm aware, it's only just been introduced in this film. Okay, so it can do anything. Okay, well, why can't it do something relevant to the conclusion of the plot?
Because one thing I wanted to ask, as far as me and Rachel disagreed on this, I thought that the injection caused the Xeno baby.
Yeah.
It did, right?
Yeah, as in she took it and then it impacted the baby and then the baby came out. Yeah.
Rachel didn't. She thought that it was when she was inseminated from before, because she was held up and she was Kay was in that big she was basically in their web, the weird the Xeno web, and they were going to feast on her later or something like that.
Well, it's a good point. I hadn't considered it.
I think it wasn't, because Andy said like she doesn't have any, she hasn't been inseminated. So unless he misread
You're right.
So that's what I said to Rachel. But
yeah. But I mean, one of your complaints about the movie was like it felt like that Zeno baby, which was really cool, kind of came in after the movie. The movie had kind of ended and then that came along. So I mean, if this
it was
injection,
an afterbirth.
Right, okay, fine. If this injection is now our solution rather than this lucky asteroid belt, then maybe we don't need that baby, or maybe that can kind of be like the conclusion can kind of be part of the, I don't know. That's just my thoughts. Listen, if you guys made it this far through the video, thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We've got other videos on Alien, Romulus, Gladiator. Just check them out. Thanks so much, guys. See you on the next one.
Have a good one.